Welcome everyone to the Wheeler Centre and to this wonderful event, Stories of Country. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the country that we're now on. That's Kulin country, the elders past and present, and the strong and vibrant Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community who call this place home. I particularly want to acknowledge Uncle Larry Walsh, who is a Kulin elder and one of our speakers tonight. So welcome, Uncle Larry. I also want to acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded on this country, and it wasn't actually ceded anywhere across the country that we all now call Australia. So this event is a part of a 5-event series which is called Outbound, A Week in the Country, and it's talking about and exploring issues related to rural and regional Australia. But this event tonight's a little bit different in that it features 3 amazing storytellers, I have over here, who are bringing you a view of country and stories of country that go beyond many conceptions of what land is. You'll be hearing from 3 storytellers from cultures that have at their heart connection to country as central to our very being. In Indigenous ways of being, country is place, country is connection, country is knowledge, country is belonging, and country is identity. Before Europeans came here, every part of this country was intimately known and respected. It was managed in such a way to be strong, bountiful, and a provider of life. The country we are on today is part of the region, the cultural region that's known as the Southeast. And each of the storytellers we have with us are from this region, from the Southeast. So Uncle Larry Walsh is a Taungurung man, just north of Melbourne. Pauline is a Yorta Yorta and a Kulin Nation woman. And Hannah is Wiradjuri from New South Wales, and I'm Worimi from Mid-North Coast, New South Wales. So we're all representing various parts of the Southeast here together. So the Southeast is known as a region for its incredibly rich and fertile land, and that's what made it such a prize, such a colonial prize when the newcomers arrived. And they came from across the seas, they came from Tasmania with stories of this rich country that was ready for possession. And the whalers and sealers, of course, came to the coast and took of other bounties. So with invasion, country became possession, it became collateral, and it became wealth. And the huge desire for land that the settlers brought with them resulted in the dispossession of Indigenous peoples across this country. It also resulted in huge changes to the landscape. So, for instance, in Kulin country and in lots of parts of the southeast, the yam root murnong is grown, and hard-hoofed animals, when they came into this country, they destroyed all the murnong crops, which meant that people literally didn't have food to eat. But Europeans also changed the courses of rivers, they changed the soil, they changed the land, and they fenced and contained sections of it. And if anyone travels up in a plain, you know, in the southeast, and I live up in the north now, so I see different parts of country now, but if you ever travel on a plain across the southeast, you see a patchwork of possession, really. You see these little blocks of land that have been carved off and that are owned by various people. So these spaces are often fenced and contained, and they're often inaccessible to us today. And the question is, how do we care for, look after, heal and connect with country when we have no rights to it? And when we talk about the fight for rights to country, there have been many assertions of this right since invasion. Like, if anyone's familiar with the archives of the Southeast and the historical material, it was constantly stated on this country, this is our land, and we're not giving it up. You know, that was a constant assertion. And the people of Coranderrk, just north of here, had multiple deputations where they came down fighting for a piece of land to call their own. Yirrkala bark petitions from up north. There were thousands of people recently converging in the city to protest the forced removals of people from their land in Western Australia. They were protesters, also known as the selfish rabble by many. They're a group that are known far and wide for the battles that they have fought for land and for equal rights for more than 200 years. The Yorta Yorta. And they walked off Kamargunja, they wrote endless petitions and letters, and then recently took their claim to court, their claim to country to court. And unfortunately, the judge said their connection was washed away by the tide of history. Pauline Whyman is a Yorta Yorta and a Kulin Nation woman who is an incredible storyteller and activist. Storyteller, activist, actor and artist is what I was going to say, but she's an activist as well. You might have seen her last week at La Mama in the Corandurk Minutes of Evidence project, but she's actually been in the arts and culture industries for more than 20 years. She has appeared in multiple productions locally, nationally and internationally on stage and screen. And she's increasingly moving into the role of creating her own content, such as her beautiful short film, Backseat, which explores her story. She's also an incredibly generous, supportive and caring soul, and it's a pleasure to introduce her to speak to you tonight. So please welcome Pauline.
Thank you, Genevieve, for that lovely introduction, and I'm crying before I start. It's an absolute honour to be here to give voice to my own voice, because often, I suppose, as an actress, I'm actually, playing the role of other people, and most times I'm playing the role of an Aboriginal person, and that I take with great pride. And so I was talking earlier today that I was saying that it's often more difficult to even speak from your own point of view, because I think in terms of like growing up, you're often told that you don't have a right to how you feel. Anyway, but before I go into that, my name is Pauline Whyman. I'm the youngest of 15 on my mother's side. I have 10 brothers and 4 sisters, and then altogether there are 20-something of us on my dad's side, including my dad's side, and I come second last in that bunch. My mother is Lena Ivy Whyman, that's her married name. She's 91. She's the freak of nature, being an Aboriginal woman, being alive at this time of her life, and I owe her my strength. And she had 11 of us. We were stolen from her during the assimilation policy. The first 7 of those siblings of mine were taken before I was born from the schoolhouse in Deniliquin. We were fringe dwellers at that time, being constantly moved around, shifted, and the men would follow the sheep shearing seasons. And so we lived happily on the banks of the river, often different rivers, the Murrumbidgee, the Dungala, the Murray, that large river system of the Riverina river system, following seasonal work. And we were at Deniliquin on the North Reserve at this particular time, and my oldest brother would walk the other younger ones. He was about 15 himself at the time, working full time. And being a man, while a lot of the fathers were away shearing, and so he'd walk them to school, off he'd go to work, and then he'd sort of like, pick them up on the way back home later in the day. And so he got a message to say that, his brothers and sisters were in Deniliquin jail, old Denny jail, so he ran down there. And there's my other brothers and sisters in the jailhouse. And one brother saying, "Hey, brothers, when are you going to get us out of here? I need a feed, eh? I'm starving here." "Yeah, don't you worry, I'll go and get Dad and Uncle Rusty." Off they went. Come back, Dad and Uncle Rusty out the front there now saying, "Where's our kids? I want my kids back." And of course they weren't releasing their children to Dad and Uncle Rusty, and so they said, "Well, we're going to wait here until you bring them out. We'll get them no matter what." So they slept on the lawn, and through the middle of the night they took them out the back door, and they never saw them again. And so Mum thought, "Oh well, I better have some more kids. The nest is pretty empty." So I was lucky last, and just made it in there just in time. But then we were taken away as well then, and so then I guess growing up in a non-Aboriginal community, you have these memories of your family, and then I guess you're denied any connection to your family. But I remember the day I was taken, and I was put on the train, and I remember going into the old rattler and climbing up on the leather seat, you know, like this, and then a leg up, and then onto the window. I was leaning out, and then I was told, get on the floor and sit there. So I did, right? And then chugging along, you know, for what seemed like hours. I remember looking out the window thinking, the only thing I know is the blue sky. So the blue sky would become my friend till this day, you know. And so I remember sitting there thinking, I'm feeling like I'm hungry. And they pulled out some sandwiches, and I put my hand out, and the woman said, no, you just sit there and you be quiet. So that was that. And then I was like chugging along for a few more hours or whatever. I wanted to go to the toilet, and I was like, I was already toilet trained because I was running around on the reserve, and so it's like we didn't have nappies, so you had to learn how to go to the toilet real quick. Anyway, so, and I said, I need to go to the toilet, and she said, no, you sit there and you be quiet. So until I couldn't hold it any longer, and I felt like this pool was coming out from under me. Anyway, I remember thinking, oh my God, she's going to see it. It's terrible, I can't deal with this. Anyway, so she saw it, and then she said, you filthy little abo, now you sit in it. And this was day one of my, to be looked after in a better place. I found that really difficult to believe, that this was going to be the beginning of my new journey to be looked after much better. I was thinking, what am I doing? You know, I wasn't even 2, but I remember that day. Anyway, so I go to this new family, sitting there, and I remember my foster parents saying, oh, we're your new parents, these are your new brothers and sisters. And I was thinking, no, you're not my parents. I've got brothers and sisters. I was thinking, I'm going to find my way home. Anyway, a month later, welfare come and visit, check on your welfare, and I said to my foster mother, well, she's getting all ready and everything. I said, who's coming? She said, the welfare from Youth Community Services. And I said, oh, what are they and what do they do? Well, they come and check on your welfare and make sure you've been looked after. I was like, oh, okay. And anyway, so she rocked up, this lady, and my foster mother's on her best behaviour. So she pulls out, you know, the biscuits and the milk and everything and tea and whatever. And of course I naturally asked if I could have a biscuit, and then I ate the whole lot. And then I asked for some milk, I drank the whole lot, and I got a good flogging after that. But anyway, that's why I've got large hips to this day, because I still love biscuits and milk. But I asked, I remember leaning over the chair like this, but I was only about this high. And I said to the woman, I said, oh, when am I going home? And she nearly choked on her tea and her biscuit. And she said, oh, well, we don't know where they are. And I was thinking, well, that's a bit strange, because didn't you guys kind of bring me here? And so the next month I said, have you found them yet? She goes, oh, no. So for me it was like I asked every month for 10 years until I found that they'd found my family again. Strangely enough, it took 10 years, but I was able to meet them when I was 12, so it took 2 years to actually have that process of finding them. And they said, you have to write a letter. So I was like, oh, I couldn't read and write, so I taught myself to read and write very, very quickly, and through the cereal packets, newspapers, and my younger siblings, who I used to, because I was there like little Jackie Jack, I was like cook, cleaner, I helped plough fields, so this was my early life. And so I got the kids to, like, when the younger ones, when they first started school, oh, look what we did today, what does this say? I go, did you not ask your teacher? So you've got to ask your teacher, that's what they're there for. So they go and ask their teacher, and they come back and they go, oh, it says this. It sounds like that. I said, oh, that's cool. So I learnt through them to teach myself to read and write, but they still didn't know I didn't know what I was doing. And so they thought I knew everything. And so I wrote that letter. That took 2 years. I wrote, dear Mum, my name is Pauline. I'm your daughter. I would like to meet you. Would you like to meet me? So I was 10. And so that reply, like I said, took 2 years, and then I finally met my mum. And I guess too, what I'm trying to say is that although that was a policy that took me away, at that time, I'd never forgot my connections to family and how important that actually was to me, to this, you know, to the time I actually met them. And I remember actually meeting them and thinking, I pulled up out the front and all these kids come running out. I didn't realise they were nephews and nieces, and then brothers and sisters, and then it was like the crowd parted and this little woman come out, and I was thinking, oh, this must be Mum because she's very, very important, and everyone parted the ways. But I was only, 17 months. She was like now in her 50s because she had me in my in her 40s. And so I didn't recognise her because she'd greyed up a bit and whatever, and it had been quite a long time. And she rushed me and hugged me and said, oh my God, hasn't she grown? And I remember that moment, and I remember thinking, no one will ever take away that determination that it took to get here, because having the right to go home to your family was a constant and relentless fight to be able to get there. And so, although there was the years that had passed where I wasn't there, there was still the emotional and spiritual connection to family and therefore to country, and all those beautiful, rich, rich knowledge of my people and my culture there just waiting for me to come home. And I think that's what's largely misunderstood. I think the unwritten connections that we have with our people, with our communities, and our birthright, our sovereign right. And I was saying to someone the other day, when you wake up, it's like, as an Aboriginal person, an Aboriginal woman, it's never a passive thing, because you think, oh God, what have we got to deal with today? You know, like, are they going to give us the basic card? It's down in Shepparton now, so hopefully it won't get down here, you know. And like, having done a little bit of research into the effects of all that, you know, it's been shown that, you know, we as people, we're actually more poorer. Well, there's a lot more poverty since the measures of the intervention, because they're all measures of the intervention, and these are oppressive, because we're kind of trying to keep up with the last goalposts that were set up, and then it goes and changes again, and so we're constantly trying to be able to, I suppose, deal with the changing of the guards, which constantly change. And I think people don't understand how that then impacts on one person, let alone a whole community, you know. And so to feel powerless is, your voice not being heard is a sense of powerlessness. But I find that together we can rise up. And I found in my personal journey as an actor, I found that, you know, like telling our people stories. I did a show called Stolen some years ago, and at the time it was one of Australia's greatest exports in the theatre world, and we travelled, like I said, for 5 years we travelled with that all around the world, around Australia, and that really was the first time the arts had accepted that story to fund it, to be able to give voice to our stories. And I think that's where I find the power in being involved in the arts as a storyteller. But I also come from the long line of activists as well, and like Uncle William Cooper. He wrote a petition. I'm not sure if many of you know of Uncle William Cooper, but can Google him, and he's quite easy to find. And all sorts of other activists, right up to nowadays my family had fought for all sorts of wonderful things. So I felt really inadequate, and I thought, well, through the arts I can give voice through our stories, and that's where I feel like I can grow and empower myself. I'm not sure if I'm making any more sense and if I'm running out of time or whatever. Oh gosh, I've just gone a bit blank then for a moment. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to be able to just say that for me and my journey, to be able to tell you my story in a sort of very sort of shallow kind of, without going into too much depth, and then coming here today and being able to have found my way home, I think I'm really, really lucky in that sense. But I guess storytelling, connection to land, is what brought me back, and my sovereign right as an Aboriginal woman is to be able to, speak about what it is that I would like in my life. And, we want our land rights, not going into a big rave or anything like that, but we want to be able to have our own voice and not be part of the Aboriginal industry. And when I mean Aboriginal industry, I guess what I'm saying is that the funding, for instance, that's been taken out of Aboriginal programs, that's affected so many people's lives. The effects of that you won't know until the full effects of that you won't know until some years to come. But where has that money gone? It's obviously lining someone's pocket somewhere, and so we've got a lot to deal with in terms of being survivors. But we don't want to just survive. We want to be able to thrive and live in this life as well. And we need to be heard. And I'm sure a lot of people here are converts. Has anybody met an Aboriginal here before? Put your hand up. Yeah, there's quite a few people, which is great. So has anybody actually had a conversation? Out of those people, have you had a conversation with an Aboriginal person? Put your hand up. That's great. And with those people has had a conversation with an Aboriginal person, have you ever been to their home? Put your hand up. That's great. Look, these statistics are getting better all the time. But I mean, I've seen that done before, but it can give you a quick sort of idea of, how many people do interact with our other Aboriginal people. Put your hand up if you know of the place that we are right now. Put your hand up. Oh yeah, yeah. Put your hand up if you have never heard of Coolin. So that's really great. So there's only a number of you. Anyway, that's all I want to say for today. Thank you.
Let's give her a big round of applause. Thank you. There's so much in that to respond to. There's so much beauty and so much, heartache and so much strength and power as well. I didn't mean to call you an activist before. I had an artist, but you are an activist, because through your art and through your stories, you're making change. And I think it's so incredible to hear people's first-hand stories. It takes a lot of courage to tell them, but it's so incredible to hear that and to hear your growth and your journey and what you've been through. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I'm going to applaud her again. Our next speaker is the lovely Hannah Donnelly. She's a Wiradjuri woman from New South Wales who's been living in Melbourne for a while now. And I was lucky enough to travel through the country that Hannah grew up on recently, Gamilaroi country in New South Wales. And I was going there to go to the Mile Creek Massacre Memorial ceremony that Hannah's family are very involved in and have had a big role in setting up. And it's just one of the most amazing places in Australia. It is, because it's a place in the country where the most terrible violence happened, as it has in many places across Australia. But it was in 1838, a huge number of men, women and children were killed by some settlers who were actually tried and hanged for it, which is really unusual. It didn't happen anywhere else in the country. Most of that violence that occurred was not even recorded, and people were certainly never charged for it. So it was quite an unusual place in that way. But what's happening there now is even more unusual, because both sides of the frontier come together, descendants of perpetrators and of victims come together in a ceremony of healing each year. And it's extraordinary because that healing is palpable in the way people interact with each other, and everyone's hugging and sharing stories. And a descendant of one of the perpetrators got up, he's quite an old man, and he read a statement, and he got up with his grandson, who's a very young man, and they said, "We're very sorry for what happened." And then there's a lot of non-Aboriginal school kids who read out at each point on this journey. You walk around the site, and there are narratives about what happened, and they read it to you, all these young white school kids, and then they say, "We remember them." And it's just extraordinary. Wow. And they want that place to influence the rest of the country. And there are moments, you know, in other places like Coniston, the descendants have come forward in Northern Territory, that happened in 1928, a massacre. There are people coming forward and starting to talk about this history, but there's nowhere else like it. And that's where Hannah comes from. But these days she's been very involved in human rights and activism here and overseas, and these days she's a publisher as well. So she publishes a zine and also an online website as well that looks at a whole lot of new music emerging. So welcome, Hannah.
Thank you, Yama. I'll just be reading from a written piece tonight. I was walking down the gully to check the recharge areas where water soaks down and the stories of our springs belong. Pausing on the track, I squinted into the afternoon glare, hoping to finally see the drooping branches of the weeping mile on the horizon. The mile woodland had become sparse in this area, a sign of the disrupted groundwater. Long before the others came to our country, the sleepy water had been travelling through the porous rock for centuries. Our Creator lay deep between impermeable rock and sandstone. As he rose to the surface, our aquifers were bound. Our water systems were so damaged by the holes of greed before their world ended. These holes of mega development pockmarked our mother, and as she cried, the water table lowered. They understood then the hydraulic interaction of our water systems and the inescapable impact on our flows. But her tears would not stop them as they cut deeper and deeper into her flesh with greed. Now, sacred springs are tainted with saline. Now, I can't tap the roots of the bubaya for water. I had not been back to this recharge site since I was with my father. For years, I'd been working on the granite wall back home. Slab after granite slab on top of each other had remained for thousands of years. This water collection site had been hidden in the granite outcrops near the 3 dams. If you walked west over the wall for half a day through the granite mounds, you could see the falls escaping over the poisoned flows. Higher and higher you had to rise, jumping from slick stone to stone, till the 4 rounded leaves of the green nadu spores faded. Only then would you know that it was safer to drink the water. Finally, at the top, you find the deep consolidated wells, cleaned with fire so fresh rain would fall to the brim. I'd been walking through the dry for many days. I remember the first time I saw it with my dad. He mourned for that country, but the air was too thirsty for tears. our people kept away from the dry now. He told me the stories of those people that lived off fracturing. It leaked hundreds of chemicals into our groundwater, seeping leads and uranium into our ossified creator. Dad reckons it only took 1 or 2 generations of the frackers for them to destroy the water for their children and their children. They didn't know where to go for proper water after that. For a while, we took control of our top flows and we shared. Then nothing. Then they were gone. The only way I could cross the dry was to prepare and soak the glossy eucalypt leaves of the red stringy bark in my water supply, the way my dad had taught me. I carefully measured my intake and would only sip when necessary, because I knew I wouldn't find clean water, if any at all, in this barren country. I could see that I was getting closer to the recharge area when the reach of the dry fell to the clumps of the millet grasses and the stunted tea tree shrubs. Tea tree were able to grow on poor soils, but these ones were wrong coloured. The flowers were wrong coloured, usually white against their small woody fruits. These ones were stained and murky. I pulled at the short leaves and rubbed them to find a lesser amount of oil, and the distinctive aroma so familiar was missing. I held up my hand to shade my eyes, and I saw the comforting outline of the weeping myall trees against the undulating sand plains. I was close now. My blood pumping faster, I was almost running to the trees. The spring should lay just beyond, and if this site was improving, we could begin our species reintroduction and plant propagation on the outskirts of the dry. When I could reach out and touch the cracked grey bark of the weeping myall trees, I stopped. If the water was lower, though, I would have to go back and report the futility of my father's plans. But forcing myself to move through the wattle, I kept my eyes lowered. I could feel this country. It wasn't dead like the dry. The song was still underground. Lifting my eyes, I saw the long stems of the kumbungi reeds, dense patches of their velvety brown spikes everywhere. They were there, growing on the muddy edge of the water. The huge pool of overflow was almost crimson at its centre, reflecting the afternoon haze. The magnitude of the water enveloped so much, I couldn't even see the sandstone slopes on the other side, where I'd sat with my father a long time ago. That day, he pointed to the underwater cave where the eye of the Creator lay. He told me that one day it would return. I pushed the kumbungi aside and sat heavy with relief on the water's edge. Now I could return to our main recording site with news of renewal. Cautiously, I leaned over the edge, but I could not look into the water for too long. I would not return from the water if it called my name. This sacred water was forbidden. It was not for our consumption. It was for our country to return from the dry.
Okay, so thank you so much, Hannah, for that beautiful reading. And Hannah is the creator of the Sovereign Tracks music blog. I'm telling you this so you can look it up and follow her. And she's co-editor of the Sovereign Apocalypse Zine. It's a zine, isn't it? Zine. I never get that right. Speaking of sovereignty, our next speaker embodies sovereignty in a way that's just amazing. Uncle Larry Walsh is a Kulin elder and an elder for many people in Fitzroy and in the Melbourne community, and I count myself lucky enough to have him as my elder as well, and someone who guides me in lots of the things that I do, so I'm very grateful for that continued support that he gives me. But Uncle Larry lives sovereignty in his everyday life, so he's not part of the system. He's not part of the white system, the colonial system. He doesn't have a passport. He doesn't have a driver's license. He doesn't have a tax file number. He doesn't exist within the system at all. He is outside it, and he lives in a very cultured way, always in his life. I've heard so many good stories from Uncle Larry, but one of the ones I love the most is one of his actions, because he, like a lot of other elders in the Melbourne community, live this way and constantly resist in their everyday life. But he went to Government House one day, which is Crown land. He went to Government House and he decided that he was going to enter Government House as a sovereign Aboriginal man, so he started to unscrew the door frame to remove the door. And the police came, of course. They were called very quickly, and they said, well, you're breaking and entering. And he said, I'm not breaking anything, I'm removing the door and entering Crown land. So they tried to charge him with multiple things, but he used the Equal Opportunity Act, actually, to dispel any of the charges that were laid against him. And that's the kind of man that he lives. That's the kind of man that he is, and the kind of life that he lives. He's constantly asserting his sovereignty. As I said, he's an extraordinary man and an elder to many, and I'm very grateful to have him here tonight, for all of you to be able to share in his knowledge and his stories. So please welcome Uncle Larry.
Thank you. Look, I also pay my respects to the owners of this area, but I also pay my respect to elders past and present, and any elders here. One of the things you non-Aboriginal communities forget is you've got elders too. There are people you go to for advice. There are people who have taught you some of the things that you hold dear, and that's what an elder is. A person who doesn't tell you what to do, but sees you have an ability and tries to help you where they can with that. It's not your role to go and tell everyone what they should be doing. It's their role to look for what they want to do, and you may be able to help them. But I too have a similar background to Pauline's, only I don't remember getting taken. I remember waking up in hospital with my head in bandages, but I don't remember getting taken. I still have a brother missing. I'm in my 60s. I still have a half-sister missing. I call her half-sister because it's half likely I'll never see them. And that's my fault. See, one of the things I got out of those places was panic attacks, anxiety and paranoia from those places. And living on my own country helped keep my panic attacks and my anxieties under control. And because I was doing a lot of storytelling of our traditional stories, because I started off doing fruit and veggie picking, and that's what a lot of Aboriginal were doing. So I got to meet the old men and old women when they were really, really still had a lot of knowledge. And I was lucky to meet some of them. I don't mention their names because they're passed on. But I met some very influential old women over the years. I met some very influential old men over the years, and sometimes they talk to me about how we lived and some of the old stories. And I realised that the storyteller, the lawman, was actually the key to defining an Aboriginal society. You see, if you're talking about a society, they have to have a history, They have to have sets of rules. They have to have cause and effect if you break those rules. And they have to have a communication. Well, the difficulty is that we had a communication, only you didn't recognise it because you thought communication was about writing. We didn't see art as separate from culture. For us, it was all part of the society. You learnt the song, you learnt the dance. Well, actually, it went like this. You learnt the story, then you did the painting, then you did the song and the dance. And thusly, you'd learn every rule that was connected to that historical event. I'm going to tell one story and I'm going to show all those elements that make a sovereign society in that. Once there was this orphan boy named Kubra. Now my people, Kulin, we said, Kubra, you come live with us for a while and we teach you our way so that when you're old enough you can look after yourself. So Kubra came and lived with us for a while. Now Kubra got to the age of responsibility, which was usually between 6 and 8. Kubra, we're going to have a big meeting. Now we're going to go gather the food. Now we want you to take responsibility for these fires. Just keep them going. And when we come back, we're going to have a big cook up and then we'll be able to have our meeting. Off they went. Now this day it got hot. It got hotter and hotter, and Kubra, he got thirsty. So he went down to the nearest billabong and he drank and drank and drank until there was no more water. Now when everyone came back, they were hot and tired and, what happened to the billabong? Where'd all the water go? Why is there no water? And Kubra's gone in a small voice, I got thirsty and I drank it. Kubra, don't you know that's the wrong thing to do? We're going to have to punish you. And believe it or not, I ran into an 80-year-old bloke one day when I was telling this story. This was 25, 26 years ago. And he actually confirmed that that's what his grandmother used to threaten him with. So the idea was you send them out into the bush into the dark, because back in them days, not too far, but they had to camp outside of camp in the dark. Hey, look, no KFCs, no 7-Elevens, no, really dark forest back then, and weird sounds like, oh, by the way, I've had a flu this week, so I might not get the sound right. Which is, by the way, only a small fastigale. Very small possum. Bloody noisy, but very small. So they did that. They sent him. In the meantime, they gathered up tarnuks. Now, my daughter, Hannah Donnelly, you happen to have a bottle in your bag? Oh, you haven't got the bag with you. Has anyone got a bottle? I don't want to drink it. Yes, that's all. No, I don't want to use a glass because I'll tip it on myself. We've got to be careful here. I'm trying to make sure that I don't get myself soaked. I promise I won't drink it. Thank you. So they gathered up all the tarnuks. Now, this is a tarnuk shape, even though it's not a tarnuk. Tarnuk was made out of bark and sap and fire hardened. And I've been trying to work out how that was done, but I'll get there one day when I've got patience. You had two types. One was a very large one. Another one was a small carrier one, just like a bottle of water. But no top. So they gathered up all the tarnuks and they filled them up as all they could, and then they came back to camp. And then in the morning they forgave Kubra. Kubra, come back in. Look, we're sorry we had to get angry with you. We're sorry we had to punish you, but you have to learn. Water is important and it's to be shared. So let's start again. Now, we want you to do the same again. Look after the camp. And remember, that's all the water we got. So it's to be shared by everybody. Off they went. Now this day, it started getting hotter than the day before. And Kubra's gone, if I drink this, they're going to punish me. What should I do? I know, an idea struck him. So he climbed up to the highest tree he could find, which just happened to be a manna gum, And he sat there all day sipping. Now, when everyone came back, they were hot and tired, and they've gone, "Where's all our tarnuks? Where's all our water? Where's Kubra?" And a little voice from up in the tree said, "I'm up here, and I got all your water. Kubra, come down now, and there'll be no trouble." "No, I'm never coming down, never, and I still got your water." Hey, some of you remember having 6 or 8-year-olds. You know how cheeky they can get. I remember them. My daughters are laughing. I'll be in trouble later. Anyway, so they climbed up the tree after him. Kubra waited until they got close and then jumped onto little branches they couldn't jump on. And so they hopped down angrier. "Kubra, if you don't come down now, we're going to use..." Now, I'm calling them sticks. Some people call them bundis. Other people might call them wagums. Some people might even call them clubs. "If you don't come down now, we're going to use our sticks and knock you out of the tree." "No, I'm never coming down, never, and I still got your water." Well, that made them angry, so they threw the sticks as hard as they could. The sticks struck Kubra everywhere and he dropped all the water. After everyone had a sip, they said, "Kubra, come down now, and we fix up all your hurts." And Kubra's gone, "I'm never coming down, never." And at that, his neck disappeared, his shoulders rolled over, his arms and legs shrunk, his face shot out, and his feet and hands turned into claws. And Kubra became the first koala. And the reason why the koala doesn't drink water is he remembers getting punished for stealing water. And my people, we don't skin the koala in case the spirit of Kubra returns. Now, the lessons out of that: 1, water is important and water is to be shared. 2, historically it's been proven in Victoria twice, because I have more than one koala story, twice, that their world was dry. And it's reflected in their bones. Stress that scientists have found in bones that come from lack of water. So we know a historical event happened. We know that the koala lives to be 7 to 8. We know that the koala's favourite tree is the old manna gums. But more importantly, you just heard a story of crime and punishment. Still water, first time we banish you for a day. Still water again, then you haven't learned your lesson. You were beaten and banished for life. That shows a degree of law. That shows a degree of understanding crime and punishment and making sure your society operated as one. And because of this, people go, "Oh, but their stories, their myths and their legends and all that." So they don't go looking for the hidden meaning. Nearly every story I tell tells an event that did happen. Maybe way before my time, maybe 26,000 years ago was the last time a new koala story was invented. Maybe. I mean, I'm not that old, so I don't know. But what I'm more getting at is I not only teach these stories to try and teach young Aboriginal that they do have a culture, they do have a history, and that history is so old, but it can be proven and traced through those old stories because they do mark about historical events. But they also have containing with them the rule of law, LAW, which shows a civilization. And yet today I'm still being denied it. I went to a native title meeting the other day and they told me everything I do is illegal. Like I go and pick up roadkill. That's illegal.
Oh yeah, you pick it up.
Daughter there. I don't mind my daughter joining in. This time we sent her out of the car to pick it up, so she can take credit. We go and gather and make traditional baskets and traditional string without a permit. We go and gather bones for animals for other people who might need them for their jewellery or for their makeup or whatever, without a permit. Ochre, without a permit. Hell, the other day they even wanted to ban us picking up quartz, which is what you made your spears and knife tips out of, without a permit. Why am I always being challenged that I have no culture and therefore I have to follow their rules? Why is it that me, as a man, I'm not after their $1 million home, 100 acres would do me, but I'm not after their $1 million home. The point I'm getting at, which is the most important, is that this state government and this federal government, this is the only state that hasn't got a form of land rights legislation. Now, I've been to 6 native title meetings only to be told what the government wants. This is supposed to be lawyers for us. They're not saying, oh, but you've got to defend, you've got to put your own log of claims in. So I wrote the other day, hey, as the old story goes, everything from the tops of the trees to the roots underneath, everything from the top of the water, in the water and under the water, and that also applies to the land, that's my sovereignty. And I'll start negotiating from there. Do you know, I'm nearly in the age, and I need to, because I haven't had, unfortunately, I've been very tired lately because I haven't had a rest for a while. So I'm thinking of taking a year, maybe next year, and see if I can get some of the things that sometimes affect my health under control. Little things. Sick and tired of catching a train and then wondering whether I'm going to have a panic attack or an anxiety attack, because I live outside of Melbourne. And then sometimes the wife sees me and I'm all white, drained. And that's just going from one station to another. I've had that under control for 40 years, but lately it's creeping back up on me. So I want to live quietly and peacefully for a while. And the only way I can do that is it looks like I have to take the government on to just get myself 5 or 10 acres from them. You know, you use maybe pensioners. You can go off and fossick for gold. They've already said they don't want us to do that. Why aren't I entitled to the same thing you are? You're allowed to go get a mining thing and go, you know, pick up a piece of gold or a piece of silver, yours. I have to get a bloody permit. Now, not that I want gold and silver, mind you, I keep trying to win Tats Lotto, but not that I want to go out and, you know, dig up big holes in the ground or anything like that, but I'm not allowed to in their log of claims. And I'm going, hold on, we use quartz to make knives and spearheads. You can't tell me I'm not allowed to use that. You're arguing with lawyers that are supposed to be on our side, who are on their side, and they're saying this is what we think you need. I'm not allowed to pick up a possum, a kangaroo, a flower, a bird, a lizard. Actually, there's a couple of birds I wouldn't pick up anyway because I'm related to them. But the ones I'm not related to, I'm not allowed to pick up under their laws. If I go camp and they go, oh, you need a permit, go, yeah, it's good you keep the white fellas out of here. And they go, you've got to go in town and get a permit. Yeah, maybe in a week or two, if I'm still here. They are telling me the area that my great-great-grandfather, who killed a few of them, agreed that we would stop fighting as long as we were allowed to live on our lands. And as soon as he died, they moved us. And when that lot of ancestors died, they moved us again. I am 5 generations out of 7 that were moved. Now, and they claim that shows I have no connection. No connection. I know where every story in my country started. I could take you to, well, there's some I wouldn't take you to because you're not the right people. There's women's spots I'm not supposed to know about, so I'm not going there. And there's spots women are not supposed to know about, and they're not going there. And it's fair. We're modern. I mean, you know, I don't mind going and listening to plays and we join in and yarn afterwards, all of us. We don't mind. We're modern world. But there's some things we still hold. And they're trying to deny that we can't hold them. We can't hold a story that may be 26,000 years old that actually proves we were there. You know what they did to 1948 to give the Jewish back Israel? The old Jewish scholars opened the Old Testament and then pointed to a spot and said, you know where they're talking about that? That happened right here. You know when they're talking about that? That happened over there. Australia and England and a few other countries did it for a whole country. They won't accept one of my stories actually has a longer history than the Bible. And I mean the Old Testament, which, by the way, they reckon is somewhere between 5,000 and 15,000 years. Chinese reckon 30, Egyptian reckons 28. We're 60 and it's been proven. But yet me telling a 26,000-year-old story, oh no, that can't be right. So I can't claim that area. And here's the real sneaky one. While we're in negotiations, I found the federal and state government had decided to amalgamate 5 of our forests that we were supposed to be negotiating over without telling us. Are they really serious about negotiating with us, or are they trying to say, no, you've got no sovereignty, so we don't care? If I have to, I'm trying to convince my nieces and nephews that perhaps it's time they come and lived up my way and we decided one forest belongs to us and let them move us. Because every time we've challenged them on, come and see us doing what you call illegal, they never turn up. Let's see if we build our homes in the forest and then see if they'll turn up to remove us. I doubt it because they don't want the court case in case we win. I've got a cousin that's floating around Melbourne going to court every second week, and every time he does, he goes, no jurisdiction. You know what? He's got 30 court cases all going up the ladder, and nobody wants to open them because they're afraid he might win. So it says you've got backless, spineless governments who will say anything to appease you, but will lie to us. They've made deals with the Greens, but they haven't spoke to us, and we've been in negotiations for 18 months on this. Now, I had to hear from the Green groups that this was happening, for the Green groups, to me to go see the Green groups to say, why haven't you informed us earlier? And they said, we didn't know who to inform because we thought the government was doing that. Nah, you're the first we've heard of it. My sovereignty is not recognised. I am willing to negotiate my sovereignty if the price is right. But I'm not giving it up to end up not being allowed to do what I do anyway. I want them to take me to court first to see. And by the way, it might get messy because I'm not sure how I'd go with a trial. A long one. I'd need to hide for a couple of days every day just to get through it, because all those legal arguments can't defeat the one thing. If my story says this happened 26,000 years ago, can you prove that's a lie? Because if you can prove that's a lie, you better go talk to Israel, because that's what you give them. You were the ones that divided Iran and Iraq on what they said was historically theirs. You caused their problems. Go tell them that you made mistakes and undo them. Let us have our lands. Let us have our rights. I'm not going to ban you from it. Hell, mate, I like radio. And I'd actually prefer to drive in the car because I freak out sometimes on trains. So I've got to stop now. Thank you.
It's always amazing to hear from Uncle Larry, and there's always so much in all of his stories. And yeah, I think everyone will be walking away thinking about all the things that he said tonight. But it was amazing to hear from all of these speakers, and we've got 3 generations here, really, sharing stories with you tonight. And it's important to think about generations, you know, to think about the generations to come and what we're leaving them with when we talk about country. And that's not just ecocide, as people talk about it now, and the inevitable sort of destruction we're headed to if we don't start to care for country in better ways, but also to think about future rights as well, and how we are able to access and connect to and heal and share our country and our cultures. But thank you all for coming tonight and for listening to all of us. Thank you.